Hello, everybody, and welcome to our favorite NFL podcast, Students of the Game, here with Week 8 in review. And normal, what we do on this show, Elijah, we had some big wins and some big losses this week in the NFL. Who you got for some big wins?
Well, we were going to start across the border, across the Mississippi River, where I was actually this weekend. Shout out to my grandparents who I watched the Vikings game with. Grandpa's a huge Vikings fan.
Yeah, Graham.
Shout out Grandpa Bud. But he was certainly enjoying the fact that his Minnesota Vikings got to 5-2 and the 7 games they played so far with their bye week that they've also had. But they managed to go on the road where they hadn't won, as a matter of fact, since 2007.
When I heard
Chicago.
that, I was very surprised.
I had to think about that for a second.
Me too.
There was some decent. There was like that Brett Favre Vikings team, or even the Vikings team that managed to make the playoffs a couple years ago when Adrian Peterson had his MVP season. But no, they hadn't won in Chicago in 8 years, and it looked like they weren't going to, as a matter of fact, because the Bears had the lead at 20-13 with only 4 minutes left in the game. But the Vikings managed to come back. Stephon Diggs scores the game-tying touchdown.
That was a big play.
Stephon Diggs, I don't remember this guy being a lot of a preseason, off-season hype kind of as a rookie coming in. But, man, he has been really something special the last 3-4 weeks, I would say. And this one, he managed to score the winning touchdown with under a minute to go.
Yeah, this was a weird game, too, because the Vikings defense didn't force a turnover. Bridgewater barely was over 50% in completions, and Adrian Peterson didn't average, I don't think that's a high average, 20 carries for 103 yards.
That's 5. He got 5.
Right, that big touchdown from Diggs was the difference in this one for sure.
This is a 5th-round pick, Stephon Diggs, and he has been playing lights out in recent weeks. Even on an offense that you would, Charles Johnson had a really big catch as well, and Mike Wallace is certainly getting paid like a top receiver.
Diggs, in my opinion, is filling in for what Mike Wallace is not contributing.
Well, look at the last 3 weeks from this guy. 7 catches, 6 catches, 6 catches. He's averaging about 100 yards over those last couple, and he's scored the last 2 weeks as well. Huge plays. But I thought Adrian Peterson, you said he only managed to get 5 yards, but still, he was ripping off, when I was watching the game, ripping off chunks runs of 8, 9, 10, 15 yards, something like that, getting first downs consistently, not really getting stuffed in the box like he has been at times this season. But the Vikings managed to get that win. Chicago continues to drop, but the Vikings are right up there at 5-2.
1 game behind now.
1 game behind the Packers, and really kind of an underrated team, I would say. No one's really giving them a lot of hype, but they're right there in terms of the wild card, and they have it right now.
And I don't think the Vikings are going to be a team that gets a lot of hype just because the way they play. They run the ball and they play defense. They don't do a whole lot special, but I do love that defense, and they don't get enough credit. Mike Zimmer has done a fantastic job. And maybe a guy who's kind of saving his job a little bit, Marvin Lewis in Cincinnati. Huge win for the Bengals over the rivals this weekend.
Saving his job? What are you talking about? They're 7-0.
Well, no, I'm talking about in seasons past. He hasn't been able to do much in the playoffs, and Marvin Lewis has been there, it seems like, for far too long. I'm sure Bengals fans were a little unrest if this season wouldn't have gone very well. But moving on here, 7-0, big win over the rivals this week.
They did manage to get the win. This was another one where the team that wound up winning the game was behind in it late with less than 3 minutes to go. The Bengals needed a touchdown. They were down 10-6, and they got that touchdown to their man, A.J. Green. He's just absolutely outstanding.
Took over this game for once.
Completely outstanding. And they managed to get that, and then also forced 2 interceptions of Ben Roethlisberger in Roethlisberger's return. Three. Well, 2 in the fourth quarter, I know.
To 2 in the fourth. 3 total, yeah.
Swing the tide of that game. And they managed to get the win on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I kind of thought this could be one where Cincinnati trips up just because it's a division rival.
Me too.
And it's a team that's always seemed to have their number. And with Roethlisberger's return, you figured, okay, now the Steelers' offense is going to be at full strength, and they wind up not being at full strength for reasons we'll talk about later. But Cincinnati does manage to get the win, continue to be undefeated, continue to keep pace with New England as well as Denver as undefeated teams in the AFC. Andy Dalton did throw a bad interception in this game, but he rebounded from it to find Green a whole bunch in that last drive and get the W.
And the weird part about this game for me is Giovanni Bernard touched the ball 3 times in this game. And Bernard has been out-touching Hill, used to at least at the beginning of the season when Hill was struggling. And we'll talk about how Fantasy Overs got a little screwed over from Bernard this week later. But yeah, it was just weird. And Jeremy Hill, 15 carries, 60 yards. Dalton turns it over twice, throws for 231. This is another weird game where they found ways to win down the stretch with the turnovers and also A.J. Green taking over.
Well, if you can win ugly sometimes in the NFL, that's just as good, especially if it's going to be in a win that some people are suggesting really kind of seals off the AFC North. Honestly, as bad as the Ravens have been, which we've covered quite a bit on this podcast, but they did manage to get their second win of the season. But Cleveland's not any good either, and Pittsburgh was their biggest competition, but now they're 3 games up on Pittsburgh and have a tiebreaker right now. The AFC North might be the Bengals just running away, honestly, right now, and setting themselves up for the postseason run already.
Moving to now the AFC West. You have something special with this team. I don't know why. Talk about your Raiders.
I love the Oakland Raiders. Let me give you a couple of reasons why. Derek Carr has been absolutely fantastic in his second season. He threw 4 touchdown passes against the Jets defense. A Jets defense that really, mind you, was not bad at all. I mean, Tom Brady had managed to kind of have his way with him, but that's Tom Brady. You kind of expect that.
Right.
Derek Carr, on the other hand, coming out and absolutely torching them to the tune of 34 points, making Michael Crabtree look like a receiver that he was 4 years ago, getting Amari Cooper involved, getting Andre Holmes, and Latavius Murray averaged almost 6 yards a carry in this game. The Raiders' offense is a lot of fun, and defensively, I know they have their issues, but my man Charles Woodson had his 5th interception of the season, so that's a really interesting story at 39 years old, that Woodson is still playing so well. But the Raiders...
Yeah. Khalil Mack playing pretty well on that defense.
Khalil Mack
he
is
doesn't rack
a
up the
fun
stats
young
like
star.
some people think that he should, but he does a whole lot of things that you don't see in the stat books. What impressed me about Carr in this game is the fact that Revis shut down Cooper for the most part in this game. I know 5 catches, 46 yards isn't doing nothing, but that's something that Carr was able to move away from and not lock onto Cooper and find Crabtree for 7 catches. And that's what I loved about him in this game. He's being more aggressive down the field. We know he's got a big arm.
Huge arm.
And the fact they didn't turn it over against such a good defense is really impressive. Loved the way Carr played this week. And the Raiders were 4-3. They got a winning record.
They do have the winning record
season so far.
They have a winning record. This is the second straight week Carr does not turn the football over. You look at his season stats: 15 touchdown passes to only 3 interceptions. He does have 2 fumbles lost as well, but his completion percentage is up to almost 66%. He's averaging almost 8 yards per attempt. Derek Carr has had a huge leap from his rookie year to his second year, and they've already won more games than they did last year. And I think the Oakland Raiders tremendous. And they have a shot, I think, to maybe make a wild card push with an offense that's really got a lot of young studs with Carr, Murray, and Cooper as that kind of big 3 at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. How about one that I kind of asked about last week, as a matter of fact, if the Seahawks could keep the momentum rolling as they went into Dallas? What did you make of that game that was on Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, I watched quite a bit of this game, as kind of painful as it was at some point.
Indeed, yeah. Not the greatest show of display football.
But again, the Seahawks defense gets better every week. I understand Matt Castle was in at quarterback. He played poor football. And there's no doubt about that. 13 for 25, 97 yards. But yeah, the defense.
97 yards. Oof.
Des Bryant came back in this game, but he had no effect. Richard Sherman was on this week. A lot of people, they're not seeing the interception totals like, oh, it seems like Sherman's flying off the radar. But again, you got to remember that once a cornerback gets a reputation of being a lockdown corner, you just don't throw the ball his way anymore. I saw he made a nice play behind the line of scrimmage on a great read on one of the throws. But the defense continues to get better for Seattle. KJ Wright, one of the reasons why. He's had a great year so far. But yeah, the offense, I mean, Marshawn Lynch was shut down. I mean, I credit the Cowboys defense for what they did. 21 carries, 71 yards for Lynch. Didn't get a whole lot going on. And Russell Wilson played okay, but again, he had a couple of those throws where it just didn't look, I mean, he overthrew some guys here and there, obviously, but again, the defense for Seattle was huge, and they needed this win, too, to prove 4-4, because the Cardinals ended up coming back against the Browns, so they needed to win this game to keep pace. And I like where the Seahawks are going, and a lot of people may have buried them early in the season, but I've talked about this just about every week here on this podcast, that you just can't bury a team like Seattle. Yeah, that tough hit on Ricardo Lockett, too, that I watched. Prayers up for him and his family. I think he had successful surgery the other day.
Yes, he apparently is going to be all right, which is good news.
And even though I disagree with the penalty that was called on the play, because it wasn't a blindside hit at all from Heath.
Looked like a clean hit to me.
It was a clean hit, but I guess I understand. But good thing he's okay. But yeah, big win for Seattle. But a lot of teams didn't pull out the W. So I'll send it to you, and you can talk about the Steelers for a little bit.
Yeah, well, see, the Steelers, as we kind of talked about the flip side of that, the Cincinnati Bengals playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steelers have got to be just feeling like, what on earth else can go wrong about our season? They just as soon as all these pieces and parts come back together, then one of them gets taken out again. And this time it was Roethlisberger trying to come back after he had, gotten hurt 4 weeks ago. So he misses those games and comes back, and things are looking good until Le'Veon Bell gets the injury to his knee, which we'll discuss in further detail later. But I mean, the Steelers have got to be feeling like, with the suspension that they had for Bell in the first couple games, and there was a suspension for Martavis Bryant as well, but then as soon as those guys came back, Roethlisberger got hurt, and I mean, Antonio Brown looked better than he had in quite a long time with Roethlisberger back at the helm, much better than he had been looking with either Michael Vick or Landry Jones, but it's just kind of one of those things where Bell is the heart and soul of that offense, and it's a crushing loss. So you want to talk about a big loss. It's not just the game that the Steelers lost, it's their best player that they just lost.
Right.
And they've got to be feeling like, come on, when can we finally catch a break and get our guys together? And now they won't have them for the remainder of the season in terms of...
They're starting to worry about their season, looking now 3 games behind Cincinnati and now down 1 game in the rivalry between them. They're on the outside looking in right now. I realize we got half the season to go still, but like you said, without Bell... things aren't looking too good in Pittsburgh right now.
Honestly, if you remember going back to last season where the Steelers looked like they could have the offense that it would take to make a run at either the Patriots, Broncos, something like that in the AFC, but on the last game of the season, Bell hurt his knee against Cincinnati again, if I remember correctly.
You are correct.
And then in the playoff game that they had against the Ravens, they just looked listless and they were absolutely done without Bell. They had nothing. I realize that's 1 week, and now they have a better backup in D'Angelo Williams, who looked very capable in trying to help them win that. But he's just not the same as... No one really is the same as what Le'Veon Bell can do. So that's a really tough one for them. Now, if you've got the San Diego Chargers is another game that I wanted to discuss. They played our Ravens that we've been talking about way too much. But the San Diego Chargers... they... lost Keenan Allen in this game to a lacerated kidney.
Lacerated kidney is indeed what happened. A great touchdown catch, by the way. Credit Keenan for that play, but I'm sure the Chargers would have traded that touchdown for
having him for the rest of the season. I mean, Phillip Rivers has got to be just kind of absolutely frustrated to no end for as many numbers as he puts up and as many great plays as he's able to make. They just don't seem to have the defense to stop anyone. The running game is nothing. Melvin Gordon has been very, very quiet. I think he must be averaging about 3 yards a carry this season. Yes,
and another piece of news that we weren't going to gloss over, Brandon Oliver is out for the rest of the season, so that means that Gordon's going to have to get it together. There's no doubt about it. Melvin Gordon's got to find a way to get it together, and they need to be able to run the ball because Rivers can't do this on his own for much longer. And the run defense in San Diego, if I'm a Chargers fan right now, I would be absolutely appalled. The run defense was terrible last year, and they did just about nothing to make it better. Corey Liuget got hurt last game, so he may not play against the Bears next week. So things are getting worse in San Diego.
It's a lost season, and it may wind up ultimately being their last season in San Diego, which is a whole bunch of other can of worms. But
we don't need to talk
honestly,
about
if they leave, this was not a good season to wind up having them go by the wayside. How about this one? Last night was a weird game because I actually stopped watching it because it was turning into kind of a laugher, but all of a sudden it was like, wait, what? Are the Colts making a comeback after they've been so bad the entire game? And then the game got really interesting, went to overtime, all that kind of really great game as it turned out. But the Colts still do wind up with the L, dropping them to 3-5, yet somehow still winning the AFC South. What do you make of what happened last night, Justin?
Again, I watched this game extensively, and first I want to touch on, I have no idea what is wrong with Andrew Luck. Some people say that there are injuries as a problem. Gruden mentioned it last night. But then you watched him in the fourth quarter, and he looked like the Andrew Luck of old again.
He was amazing. He was shredding that Panthers' very good defense for 2 scoring drives, long scoring drives, and a field goal.
And the other thing about that, too, is Norman took out T.Y. Hilton all game long. And Josh Norman, by the way, again, I want to talk about him. He is top 5 corner in the league right now, without a doubt, in my opinion.
I think 5 is being not enough credit.
Good. Well, you may be right.
Top 3, top 2.
So Luck played well in the second half, without throwing the ball to T.Y. Hilton because he was locked down by Norman all game. But yeah, it's just weird with the tale of two halves. He makes some throws that just make you want to scratch your head, overthrowing the ball, interceptions. Rod Coleman had a great game for the Panthers last night. it's just it's
turnovers,
puzzling for me.
The turnovers have been just absolutely.
That's what's
terrible
killed
for
him his
Luck.
entire season so far, or his entire career so far. And I thought for sure this was the year that he turns that around and decides to be more smart with the football, but he just hasn't done it.
13 turnovers between interceptions and fumbles that he's had in only 6 games. Because remember, he didn't even start those 2 games that they had against the, I believe it was Jaguars, or the Jaguars game and the Texans game, both of which they were won by Matt Hasselbeck. In games that Andrew Luck has started, they're 1-5. And he's had all of these turnovers, as many touchdowns as he's turned the ball over. That is not a recipe for success. There are not very many quarterbacks that have turned the ball over more. Probably none, actually. And
we could blame the weather, I guess, if we wanted to in the first half, but I'm not going to just because I've seen how poorly he's played the first half of the season so far. But it is weird because he gets into these spells where he looks like the Andrew Luck we all know he can be, but then again he turns. I think the turnovers come from him trying to do too much. I mean, that's the obvious statement, but I think that's probably what it is, and he may have an injury problem too, but I think it's definitely him trying to do too much. Because they don't have much of a running game in Indianapolis, and he really hasn't had one since he's been there. But I really hope... I want to see Andrew Luck play well, so I hope he starts to figure things out. And Cam Newton didn't play very well last night either. Incompletion, 19 incompletions. But again, that had something to do with the weather, I'm sure. But I am... The big win for Carolina, though. We can put that back for big wins. Because they proved themselves
continuing to be undefeated for them.
Right.
Speaking of teams in the NFC South, this is what you were ready to go. We might as well not hide it any longer. Your Falcons had a game in which they almost got their doors blown off, made it close and competitive at the end, forced it to overtime against Tampa Bay at home in Atlanta, but still wind up falling to the now 3-5 or 3-4. I'm not quite sure. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I will hand you the floor. You are able to spout your venom against your team. Go.
You're lucky that this is coming on a Tuesday, because if this came on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, I would have been a lot worse than I'm going to be for the next few minutes. And I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible. But as you can tell, obviously, and for good reason, I'm very frustrated with this Atlanta Falcons football team right now. And if you would have told me before the season started that we'd be 6-2, obviously I would have agreed and said, yes, give me that 6-2 record. But the teams we are playing and the teams we are struggling against are not okay. We have scored 17 points combined in the last 3 games against terrible defenses. That it just drives me insane. This offense right now makes me want to puke. I'm sick. Okay, the turnovers are ridiculous. We don't have a center that can snap a gosh darn football to Matt Ryan. The turnover in the red zone this game where Mike Person dribbled the ball all the way about 5 yards back. Matt Ryan couldn't pick it up. Another turnover there. Julio Jones with a fumble. And then Matt Ryan got strip sack, another fumble. And then the interception that Jacob Tamme came out and said later that was his fault. But Matt Ryan's getting a lot of flack right now. And obviously previously Matt Ryan has been the face of the franchise, so he's been able to escape some of the criticism. But right now, he's starting to get some of it, and he's responding to it in interviews, and Dan Quinn as well. They're saying a lot of good things, but I'm sick and tired of hearing about it, because I want to see it. Matt Ryan says that he needs to work on his footwork, that the offense needs to be more crisp. Roddy White saying that they need to focus on not turning the ball over. Obviously, okay. I want to see it. I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. I want to see it, and I want this offense to start scoring some frickin' points.
Well, the amazing thing to me is if you looked at yardage, which I know does not necessarily translate to points, you look at Matt Ryan, who is 3rd in the NFL in passing yards with 2,399. So they're racking up a ton of yards through the air. He's basically averaging 300 yards passing a game. Very impressive. Devontae Freeman leads the NFL in rushing yards as well as in total touchdowns. And Julio Jones leads the NFL in receiving yardage. Probably, I mean, him and Ryan's both impressive yardage performances kind of play off of each other. Obviously, every yard that Julio picks up is one that Matt Ryan picks up. But so you look at their triplets have piled up all kinds of yardage and to some extent touchdowns. But the touchdowns haven't